folks, my first guest on the show is Michael Rudkin, the chair of the National Federation of Sub Postmasters. Now, Michael, along with his wife Susan, was wrongly convicted of stealing money. Now, Michael feels they will never properly be compensated for what they had to go through. Michael, absolute pleasure to have your company. Thank you very much for it. You'll have seen much of the coverage over the last few days of Paula Vennells, the former CEO of the Post Office, in front of the committee inquiry this week. Have you any sympathy for her whatsoever? There were a few tears shed there.
Well, first of all, just to set the record straight, I'm the former NC chair of the NFSP. But in relation to my feelings towards Paula Vennells, given that she'd had plenty of heads up from the Federation during my tenure, most certainly, that there was issues with Horizon.
Yeah.
But she chose not to take heed of that. And having seen the evidence so far in the inquiry, when you get the chairman of the company at that time, which was Moya Green, that ends up putting in text messages, "I don't believe you, I've lost confidence in you," when we discover that the CEO actually kept the head of legal affairs, Susan Crichton, outside of meetings, waiting in the corridor like a subordinate, who was a very important part within the organisation to ensure that the post office itself complied with the laws of the land. And it's quite clear that what was happening was Paula Vennells had got her own agenda. She wanted to be in the limelight, take all the credit, and it didn't matter how she achieved that.
Michael, she said that she, and I quote, she said she loved the post office and she did the best job and she wanted the post office to thrive for the whole of the United Kingdom. The Sam Stein KC for the prosecution then said actually that was absolute rubbish. Would you concur? Would you agree with that assessment?
I would agree with his assessment. Sam's pretty acute at picking up on these things. Because in general, I can assure you that out of the 11,500 post offices within the network of Sub Postmasters, they all love the post office. It's an institution that they love, they worship, and they're proud to be associated with it. But when you've got a CEO who is determined to brandish all of these people as criminals, thieves, it's just absolutely outrageous and unforgivable.
Michael, I'll have a listen to some of what she had to say so viewers get a flavour.
I would just like to say, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to do this in person, how sorry I am for all that Sub Postmasters and their families and others have suffered as a result of all of the matters that the inquiry has been looking into for so long. I will answer the questions truthfully, and I'm very aware that they will be difficult to listen to for you and for me, and I ask your understanding in advance of that.
Now, to be honest with you, Michael, I apologise for showing you that because it must be enough to turn your stomach, to be perfectly frank. But I mean, is there any part of you whatsoever that believes that there is some form of a, dare I say, Christian forgiveness and a sentiment of apologising that you can accept ever?
Well, no, because purely and simply that successive CEOs have constantly passed the baton on upwards over a period of time, years, with the same institutionalised problems. So Sub Postmasters have had to wait 24 years for these kind of apologies, and the latter being the last 12 years where Paula Vennells has been in a position where she could do something for Sub Postmasters in relation to the Horizon system, because I honestly thought that when she took her position, this would be a new broom that would sweep clean, that would eradicate all these issues, and she chose to think of her career first and foremost, and was quite happy for Sub Postmasters to be prosecuted and in some cases sent to prison.
Michael, just finally then, can I get your your take on the Post Office Horizon Offences Act becoming law just today, a final act of this Parliament. What say you on that particular act?
Well, I took a really deep breath this morning, well, yesterday actually, knowing that this was the last-ditched attempt prior to a general election for this actually to be passed through law, so that all these sub postmasters, all 1,000 who have got convictions, for them now to be vindicated, to have their judgments overturned, and certainly so that as quickly as possible that this information that's on their personal files is eradicated quickly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Michael Rudkin, thank you very much for your company. Now, in studio, folks, Georgia Gillilee still joins me, the freelance journalist. Now, Georgia, I mean, you've been watching some of the events unfold over the past few days. It's been distracted somewhat by the fact that, you know, a general election was announced. But the last act, one of the last acts of this Parliament to pass the Post Office Horizon Offences Act, that's the whole nation sort of breathes a sigh of relief almost for these people and the hell that they've gone through, as highlighted in that very, very powerful drama.
Yeah, absolutely. So I haven't actually got around to watching the drama, but I've also read
You
about...
must, it's so good actually.
Okay. I'll set some time aside in the future, but it speaks to kind of the uselessness, perhaps, of some of our political arrangements, that it took that really to tell those people's stories to a wider audience. I know there was already actions before that to try and help people. But for some of these people, it's too little too late. People committed suicide, spent years in prison. I mean, I can't imagine being in that position. It would be utterly despairing to have to go through that. And I think we also have a big headline more recently about the infected blood scandal.
Exactly.
I think there are big parallels there, and to do with how
it's failures of the state, isn't
faceless
it?
bureaucrats kind of passing the buck, as I guess was saying from his own experience, passing the buck, no one taking responsibility. It's like, these are real people, real people's lives. Something is wrong, and it's not just to do with the post office, it's not just to do with healthcare, it's to do with a lot of things. I think a lot of change needs to be made. But yeah, obviously it won't be happening within this Parliament because it ends today.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Georgia, thank you very much for that.